People love to say the world used to be simpler, which is hilarious considering we once sold products so dangerous they'd make a chainsaw look responsible. And trust me, what you're about to hear makes that sound normal. The real stupidity is still ahead. 1. I still can't believe there was a time when people proudly bought radium water, thinking glowing liquid from a uranium cocktail shaker was somehow the path to health. Imagine walking into a pharmacy and being offered a drink that could literally light up your bones like a Halloween prop, and the pharmacist saying it with the confidence of a man selling vitamins. People were chugging radioactive smoothies while congratulating themselves for being ahead of the wellness curve, like early influencers before Instagram existed. Meanwhile, their teeth were quietly plotting escape like prisoners digging tunnels. The wildest part? This wasn't some black market nonsense. It was sold in stores, legally, because apparently the government looked at glowing beverages and said, "Yeah, that seems fine." And the customers? They just kept sipping, cheerfully poisoning themselves like they were auditioning for a superhero origin story. Except all they got was the hospital bill. 2. There was a kitchen appliance called the gas-powered iron, which basically combined two things humans should never put together: open flames and fabric. Imagine trying to smooth your shirt while holding what was essentially a miniature campfire with a handle. People were literally ironing clothes with a device that hissed, sputtered, and occasionally reminded you why fire departments exist. The logic must have been, electricity? Too safe. Let's bring high heat and pressurized gas directly to the laundry. The worst part is that this wasn't sold as dangerous. It was marketed as modern convenience. I love the idea of someone in the 1930s calmly smoothing their collar while unconsciously reenacting a scene from a survival documentary. And if your clothes didn't catch fire, congratulations. You had successfully completed your chores without accidentally burning down the house. Award yourself a badge for bravery. No one will know how close you came to becoming a historical footnote. 3. Let's talk about the mercury laxative, a product so catastrophically idiotic that even the bottle probably whispered, "Please don't do this." People genuinely swallowed mercury, actual mercury, as a cure for constipation, as if juggling liquid metal inside your digestive system was somehow better than eating fiber. Doctors prescribed it with the confidence of a man recommending a smoothie recipe. Every dose was like playing Russian roulette, but with plumbing. Imagine sitting at your kitchen table in the 1890s, staring at a spoonful of shiny poison and thinking, "Yes, this is medicine." And everyone around you acts like it's normal, because apparently the human brain hadn't evolved. Enough to ask, wait, should we not ingest thermometers? The wild part is that it was totally legal, cheerfully sold over the counter. People lined up to buy it, probably glowing internally like malfunctioning robots. If stupidity were contagious, this product would have been patient zero. 4. One of my favorites, lawn darts. Because what family game night doesn't need heavy spear-shaped projectiles thrown into the air over the heads of children? The premise alone sounds like a rejected idea from a cartoon villain. People stood in their backyards, launching miniature missiles toward plastic rings, while their kids casually wandered through the blast radius like NPCs with no survival instincts. And the manufacturers? They marketed it as wholesome suburban fun, essentially saying, what's the worst that could happen? Spoiler, pretty much everything you're imagining. These things were weighted, sharp, and aerodynamic, three qualities that should never describe a children's toy. But somehow, it was legal, and families kept buying it, blissfully ignoring the part where the game could turn into a medieval reenactment at any moment. Today, we call that a liability lawsuit, but back then, it was just Saturday. 5. The electric belt was sold as a men's vitality booster, which is hilarious because it was basically a wearable taser marketed as self-improvement. You'd strap this thing around your waist, flip it on, and hope your reproductive organs survive the experience. This was pitched as a cure for everything: low energy, weak nerves, bad posture, basically any problem doctors didn't know how to solve. The idea was simple: electrocute yourself until something happens. It's wild imagining a man in 1910 pacing around the living room, buzzing like an angry bee, trying to look dignified while accidentally kickstarting his own internal wiring. And the best part? There were zero regulations. You could buy one through the mail, shock yourself senseless, and no one would stop you. If anything, your neighbor would borrow it and say, "Wow, feels invigorating," while twitching like a broken light bulb. 6. Believe it or not, there was a legit product called toilet seat warmers that ran on flammable gel. Yes, someone thought heating your bathroom throne with open combustion was a reasonable idea. Imagine waking up, stumbling to the bathroom, lighting a tiny fire under your toilet and saying, "Perfect, now it's cozy." It's the exact kind of invention that screams, "I didn't think this through," and people bought it. They trusted that a plastic seat hovering above a controlled burn would somehow remain calm and contained. Meanwhile, the instructions probably read like a dare. Do not use near curtains, clothing, oxygen, pets, or anything else capable of catching fire, which is basically the entire universe. The fact it was legal tells you everything about regulatory standards back then. Comfort mattered more than common sense, and apparently no one considered the phrase "spontaneous toilet explosion" a deal breaker. 7. One of history's greatest hits, asbestos baby blankets. Because nothing says "sweet dreams" like wrapping an infant in fireproof cancer flakes. At the time, people genuinely believed asbestos was a miracle material, strong, insulating, safe, like nature's gift to domestic life. So they used it in everything, including products meant for the smallest, most fragile humans. You could swaddle a baby in carcinogenic fibers and still be considered a responsible parent because no one knew what lung damage meant yet. The irony is brutal. Companies marketed it as protection, something that would shield children from danger, while quietly installing the danger directly into their lungs. And it was all perfectly legal, regulated even. Imagine opening a modern baby catalog and seeing asbestos plush bedding, now with extra fibers for warmth. I think every parent today would levitate out of pure rage, but back then, it was totally normal. 8. In the early 1900s, people willingly bought heroin cough syrup, which is exactly what it sounds like. A bottle of narcotics with a label that basically said, "Give this to children too." If you were sick, the doctor would hand you a prescription that turned your lungs into a side quest. Parents were dosing their kids with pure opiates and calling it a good night's sleep. The wild part is that nobody saw a problem because they were too busy enjoying the fact that their cough was gone and they suddenly felt like life made sense. This was marketed openly, proudly, like a premium product. No stigma, no warnings, no disclaimers, just vibes. Imagine if modern pharmacies sold NyQuil, now with 30% heroin for more restful silence. The hypocrisy is insane. Today we panic over energy drinks, but back then, we casually gave toddlers narcotics to help them nap through the cold season. 9. There used to be a thing called a baby cage, which was basically a metal box you hung out your apartment window so your child could get fresh air. Imagine looking out of a fourth-floor window and seeing a tiny human suspended over the street like a loaf of bread cooling on a ledge. Doctors promoted it as healthy, mothers called it convenient, and neighbors pretended not to notice the airborne toddler swaying in the wind like a confused pigeon. This was not only legal, it was recommended. The idea was that sunlight and airflow were beneficial, apparently more beneficial than not dangling your offspring above pedestrians like a claw machine prize. It's one of those inventions that really tests your belief in human logic. People genuinely thought this was modern science. Today, child services would arrive before you even installed the screws. Back then, people just waved and went about their day. 10. The lead face cream era is one of the most impressively disastrous beauty trends in human history. Women applied lead-based products directly to their skin to achieve a pale porcelain look, as if poisoning yourself for aesthetics was a normal part of a morning routine. Imagine waking up, brushing your hair, and smearing industrial toxins across your face while thinking, "Ah yes, beauty." And the best part? People complimented it. The more damage it caused, rashes, peeling, discoloration, the more elegant society claimed it looked. It was like a competition to see who could suffer the most gracefully. Manufacturers didn't just sell this, they advertised it with pride, promising youthful radiance while quietly turning users into human chemistry experiments. And it was absolutely legal. No warnings, no regulations, just a collective agreement to let vanity override survival instincts. The fact we survived this era at all is shocking. 11. Once upon a time, you could stroll into a hardware store and buy chlorinated arsenic wallpaper. the home decor choice that slowly poisoned families while making their living rooms look fashionable. Victorians loved bold, vivid green wallpaper, unaware that the pigment was basically sprayed death. Guests would compliment the rich colors while slowly inhaling microdoses of poison like it was an aromatherapy session from hell. Children played in rooms emitting toxic gas, and no one thought it was odd that everyone had chronic headaches and fainting spells. Scientists eventually discovered the problem, but for decades it was perfectly legal, sold in catalogs with poetic names like Emerald Elegance, as if the room itself wasn't plotting homicide. Imagine a modern influencer giving a room tour. This is our living space, and yes, the walls may kill us, but look how vibrant it is. People genuinely died for interior design. 12. There was a real product called grenade alarm clocks, which used tiny explosive charges to wake you up. Yes, before snooze buttons, some genius decided the best way to start your morning was with a controlled detonation on your nightstand. You'd wind it, set the timer, and hope the blast didn't launch your soul into the afterlife. The concept was simple. If you weren't conscious before the explosion, you definitely would be after. And shockingly, people loved it. They bragged about how effective it was, like being violently startled awake was a lifestyle. The wildest part? Completely legal, sold in stores, marketed as reliable. No one asked if maybe waking up should be a calm process instead of a reenactment of a war documentary. Imagine someone using that today and their smart home assistant just screaming, "What are you doing?" 13. At one point, toy companies genuinely sold mini chemistry sets that included uranium ore, real uranium, for children. Because apparently nothing says fun education like letting an 8-year-old run small-scale experiments with radioactive materials. Parents bought these proudly, thinking their child was becoming a young scientist, while the kid was basically doing amateur nuclear research next to the family dog. The instruction booklets made it seem harmless. Learn about radiation, as if the potential side effects wouldn't show up 10 years later. And of course, the kits were perfectly legal, because in that era, regulations were more of a suggestion than a rule. It's wild imagining little Timmy in the basement, swirling glowing rocks in a beaker like a Bond villain in training, all while everyone upstairs had no idea the household had entered the atomic age. 14. There was a personal grooming device called the Home Electroshock Rejuvenator, which promised youthful skin by zapping your face with mild electric currents. It was sold as a miracle beauty gadget, like a DIY lightning strike for wrinkles. You'd plug it in, press the metal ends to your cheeks, and hope you didn't accidentally restart your heart. People bought it in droves because the ads claimed it would invigorate the nerves and awaken the complexion, which is marketing code for, "We don't know what this does, but it looks scientific." And somehow, it was fully legal. No disclaimers, no warnings, just enthusiastic customers willingly turning themselves into discount Frankenstein experiments. It's amazing how many people trusted a device whose entire business model was, what if electricity made you prettier? 15. Finally, we have the kerosene hair treatment, a spectacularly reckless beauty trend where people poured flammable liquid on their heads to kill lice. Yes, instead of using soap or shampoo, someone thought, let's coat our scalp in rocket fuel. And it caught on. Families lined up to buy kerosene like it was some kind of miracle elixir, completely ignoring the part where one spark would turn them into a human torch. Doctors shrugged and called it effective, which is technically true in the way burning down your house solves a termite problem. The fact this practice was legal tells you everything about the era. Survival was apparently optional, but good grooming was mandatory. It's astonishing anyone from that time managed to survive long enough to invent safer alternatives. 16. There used to be a medical treatment charmingly called sun lamp therapy, which basically meant blasting your skin with industrial-strength UV light until you looked like a microwaved lobster, because apparently the cure for every ailment in the 1930s was, let's irradiate you just a little more. People sat under these lamps casually, like they were sunbathing on a beach where the sun was angry and unpaid. Doctors claimed it boosted vitality, which is funny considering most users walked away with burns, peeling skin, and a tan that looked less summer glow and more radioactive mishap. And families bought these things for home use, placing them proudly next to the living room furniture, as if nothing says cozy evening like frying your epidermis under a light bulb designed to melt steel. The best part is nobody cared about long-term effects. They were too busy thinking, wow, this stings. Must be working. 17. One of the most incredible inventions ever sold legally was the vibrating slimming belt, a contraption that promised to melt fat by shaking your torso like a paint mixer. Picture someone standing in their living room, wrapped in a giant rubber strap connected to a motor that violently rattled them for 30 minutes straight, all while they pretended this was the pinnacle of science. People genuinely believed that if they shook hard enough, their problems, dietary, emotional, and possibly existential, would simply fall off. The machine made users bounce like cartoon characters in earthquakes, and yet the advertisements insisted this was gentle toning. The fact it was legal tells you everything about consumer standards at the time. Instead of exercise, people strapped themselves into industrial-grade wobble machines and hoped the chaos would magically sculpt their bodies. If that logic worked, riding a bus on a pothole-filled road would have made everyone shredded. 18. Let's not forget the liquid cocaine toothache drops, because apparently the best way to soothe mouth pain was to numb your entire soul. A simple toothache? No problem. Just drip some pharmaceutical-grade rocket fuel on your gums and enjoy the sensation of detaching from your physical form. These drops weren't just potent. They were marketed as safe enough for children, which means somewhere in history, a 5-year-old complained about molar pain and was handed a drug that could make a grown adult rethink their life. Parents loved it because the kid stopped crying, unaware that the reason was not comfort but complete neurological shutdown. And of course, pharmacies sold this openly, proudly, without a single warning label. People trusted it because the doctor said so, ignoring the part where the doctor probably hadn't slept in 3 days and was diagnosing patients through fumes. 19. There was a period where arsenic wafers were marketed as beauty supplements for women, promising flawless skin through the power of slow, elegant poisoning. The logic seemed to be, if your skin glows while your organs give up, that's a fair trade. Women purchased these wafers like they were luxury chocolates, nibbling on them casually while society complimented their radiance, unaware that the glow came from internal rebellion. Ads showed graceful ladies smiling with dead eyes, claiming the product purified the complexion, which is one way of saying reduces blemishes by eliminating the concept of health entirely. These wafers were completely legal, sold in respectable stores, and nobody questioned why eating a known toxin was being pitched as self-care. Today we panic about artificial dyes in candy, but back then, eating arsenic was just maintaining standards. 20. Another masterpiece, the anti-freckle bleach solution, a face lotion made with straight-up acid. People applied this corrosive liquid to their cheeks because freckles were apparently such a devastating social crisis that chemical scouring was considered reasonable. Users would smear it on nightly, ignoring the stinging sensation of their skin dissolving like overcooked noodles. Advertisements promised a renewed complexion, which is technically true if you count removing entire layers of skin as renewal. The worst part? It was proudly sold in pharmacies, perfectly legal, no one batting an eye as customers left with bottles labeled "caution" in fonts too small to read. And when someone's face turned blotchy and irritated, they just assumed the product wasn't strong enough and used more. The idea of dermatology back then was basically, if it burns, it's doing something. 21. My personal favorite, the home X-ray machine. Yes, at one point people thought it was perfectly normal to own a device capable of shooting radiation through your bones in the comfort of your living room. Want to check your sinuses? Zap yourself. Curious about your joints? Zap again. These things were sold through mail-order catalogs, marketed as innovative health tools, as if accidental self-irradiation was a fitness routine. Families would gather around the machine like it was a board game, taking turns glowing internally while believing they were witnessing the future of medicine. And the instructions were hilariously vague, probably saying something like "do not overuse," with no explanation about what overuse might entail. It's amazing humanity survived this era, considering how many households casually performed dosage-free medical imaging. Today, a hospital X-ray requires layers of shielding, but back then, you just pointed it at your face and hoped for the best. 22. There used to be an insect repellent called Paris Green, which sounds classy until you learn it was literally made from copper arsenic. Yes, the poison again. People sprinkled this bright green powder around their kitchens like decorative confetti, unaware that they were basically seasoning their homes with lethal dust. It killed bugs, sure, but it also killed pets, plants, and probably the occasional unsuspecting human. The instructions were vague at best, recommending light application, which meant customers sprinkled it liberally because subtlety didn't exist in that century. And somehow, this was legal. You could walk into a store, buy a bag of a substance used to kill rats, and throw it on your windowsill like it was fairy dust. The absurdity is breathtaking. They were fighting insects by turning their homes into chemical weapon sites and calling it good housekeeping. 23. Let's revisit the era when exploding cigarettes were an actual novelty item sold legally. These were cigarettes rigged with tiny charges that created a loud pop when lit, designed for pranking friends, which is hilarious because nothing says friendship like detonating a fireball near someone's face. People bought these as jokes, tucked them into packs, and waited for someone to ignite them, fully accepting the possibility of temporarily blinding their companions. And they were legal. Stores sold them alongside candy and magazines, as if casual face explosions were a harmless pastime. The packaging even advertised them as safe, which is bold, considering the entire purpose was to cause chaos. Imagine doing that today. Someone would start a lawsuit quicker than the cigarette could spark. Back then, it was just another Tuesday in the land of questionable decisions. 24. There was a hair removal product called X-Bazin, advertised as a miracle cream, but actually made with potassium sulfide so corrosive it could strip paint. People smeared it on their skin, waited for the burning to intensify, then wiped it off along with every hair and half their epidermis. The ads showed glamorous women touching their cheeks, smiling serenely, which is wild considering anyone who used it probably smelled like rotten eggs and poor judgment. But it sold extremely well, and it was fully legal, because apparently regulation back then was just, if it doesn't kill someone instantly, go ahead. And if users ended up with chemical burns, the companies shrugged it off as sensitivity. Imagine willingly rubbing industrial chemicals on your face for beauty. Then again, maybe don't. Some trends don't deserve resurrection. 25. Mechanical massagers used to be household devices powered by gasoline engines. Yes, gasoline. People would start a literal motor inside their home to soothe sore muscles. Imagine sitting on your sofa while a machine next to you vibrates violently, emits fumes, and threatens to ignite the curtains. Advertisements promised deep relaxation, ignoring the fact that nothing is relaxing about inhaling exhaust while your spine gets rattled like a toolbox inside a washing machine. These things shook so aggressively, you practically needed a seatbelt, and of course, they were totally legal. Doctors even recommended them, calling them therapeutic, which probably meant they cured muscle pain by distracting you with the possibility of carbon monoxide poisoning. The fact that consumers didn't immediately flee their homes screaming says a lot about how casually people accepted danger back then. 26. There was a popular nostril-clearing remedy that consisted of inhaling powdered menthol mixed with ammonium chloride, basically huffing industrial fumes to refresh the sinuses. People would tilt their heads back, snort a pinch of this chemical snowstorm, and act like it was the height of hygiene. The sensation was described as invigorating, which is one way to say lung slap. Everyone who used it probably felt their nasal cavities instantly regret every life choice they'd ever made. And pharmacies sold it proudly, labeling it as safe for daily use, even though daily use probably shaved years off your respiratory system. Marketing back then truly thrived on the idea that discomfort meant healing, and if something made your eyes water while your brain vibrated, it must have been working. 27. At one point, people used sulfur candles inside their homes to disinfect the air, which essentially meant lighting a stick of pure sulfur and fumigating yourself like a crop field. Families would gather in a room, close the doors, ignite the candle, and wait while choking clouds of toxic smoke filled the space. The burning smell alone could stun a goat, but manufacturers promised it would cleanse impurities, which is hilarious considering the only thing being cleansed was your will to live. And this was perfectly legal. Doctors encouraged it. People willingly sat in rooms that smelled like an erupting volcano because they believed it prevented illness. Today, opening a window fixes most air quality issues, but back then, people preferred slowly marinating themselves in a sulfuric mist and calling it health maintenance. 28. Let's appreciate the invention of electric hairbrushes, which promised shinier hair by running weak electrical currents through your scalp. You'd brush your head with a device that hummed ominously, hoping it wouldn't deliver a surprise jolt strong enough to realign your personality. These brushes were advertised as scientific grooming, a phrase that probably sold well because no one understood science. The funny part is that half the users claimed it worked, even though the only thing it actually did was lightly electrocute their follicles. It wasn't regulated, wasn't tested, wasn't even questioned. It just existed as another household gadget you could buy and use until your hair stood on end like you'd just seen a ghost. If frizz was the goal, this thing delivered exceptional results. 29. And finally, we arrive at chloroform-soaked cleaning cloths, sold as convenient household disinfectants. You'd open a tin, pull out a rag drenched in knockout-grade chemicals, and casually wipe your countertops while inhaling vapors that could drop a horse. People use these while cleaning enclosed spaces with zero ventilation, wondering why they felt lightheaded or temporarily forgot their own names. And this wasn't prohibited. It was marketed as the modern way to keep a home spotless. Some advertisements even suggested using them to refresh the air, which is impressive because nothing says refreshing like briefly losing consciousness. Home cleaning used to feel like a trust fall with toxic chemicals, and people did it willingly, confident the cloths were making the place safer, not slowly erasing their brain cells. And that's it. Proof the world once treated danger like a hobby. Tell me which disaster in a box wins your vote. And if you survive this list, hit like and subscribe for more madness.